The wind howled through the mountain pass like a wounded animal, carrying with it the first bitter taste of winter. Snow fell in lazy spirals, dusting the rocky trail that wound its way through the Wyoming Territory wilderness. The stagecoach lurched and groaned as it navigated the treacherous path, its wheels struggling for purchase on the frost-slicked stones. Inside the coach, Evelyn Parker pressed her gloved hands together, trying to ward off the cold that seeped through every crack and crevice. Her traveling dress, once pristine navy wool, was now dusty and wrinkled from 3 days of hard travel. She gazed out the small window at the forbidding landscape, towering pines shrouded in mist, jagged rocks jutting from the earth like broken teeth, and endless miles of untamed wilderness that seemed to swallow all traces of civilization. At 23, Evelyn had the delicate features that spoke of Eastern refinement, honey-colored hair pinned beneath a modest bonnet, green eyes that held more sorrow than a woman her age should carry, and hands that knew needlework better than hard labor. Yet here she was, bound for a future as uncertain as the mountain weather. The driver, a grizzled man named Josiah, shouted something unintelligible over the wind. The coach swayed dangerously, and Evelyn gripped the worn leather seat. She thought of the letter tucked in her reticule, the one from Mr. Samuel Travis, the rancher who had paid her passage west, a man she had never met but would soon call husband. "Miss Parker, you come highly recommended as a woman of good character and domestic skills. I'm a man of means but little time for courtship. If you are willing to make a life in the territory, I offer you security and respectability as my wife." Security and respectability. Not love, not companionship, just another transaction, like the one that had bound her to servitude after her parents' deaths. But what choice did she have? The factory work in Boston barely kept her fed, and her late husband's debts had left her with nothing but shame. The coach hit a deep rut, jolting violently. Evelyn heard Josiah curse as the horses whinnied in distress. Through the window, she could see they had entered a narrow canyon, the walls closing in like a trap. The snow was falling harder now, thick flakes that obscured the trail ahead. "Hold tight, miss," Josiah's voice carried back on the wind. "Weather's turning mean." The words had barely reached her when she felt the coach tilt at an impossible angle. Time seemed to slow as the world turned sideways. Evelyn's scream was lost in the cacophony of splintering wood, terrified horses, and Josiah's final shout. The coach rolled once, twice, before coming to rest against a massive boulder. Darkness claimed her. When consciousness returned, it came with pain, sharp and insistent in her ribs and shoulder. Evelyn's eyes fluttered open to find herself half buried in snow. The overturned coach a dark shape against the white landscape. The horses were gone. Their harnesses snapped. Of Josiah, she saw only a still form pinned beneath the wreckage. "Josiah!" Her voice was barely a whisper. She crawled toward him, ignoring the fire in her ribs. But one look at his glassy eyes and unnatural angle of his neck told her all she needed to know. Alone. She was alone in the wilderness with night falling and a storm building. Her traveling case had burst open, scattering her few possessions across the snow. She gathered what she could with trembling hands. A woolen shawl, her mother's Bible, the letter from Samuel Travis now smeared with moisture. The cold was already seeping through her clothes, turning her fingers numb. She knew she had to find shelter or perish. But which direction? The trail had vanished beneath fresh snow, and the canyon walls offered no clue. Evelyn struggled to her feet, wrapping the shawl tight around her shoulders. Each step sent pain shooting through her side, but she pressed on, following what she hoped was the trail. The wind picked up, driving snow into her face until she could barely see. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes, time lost meaning in the white void. Her strength was failing when she stumbled, falling hard into a drift. This time, she couldn't rise. The cold didn't hurt anymore. It was almost warm, inviting her to rest. So, this is how it ends, she thought dimly. Not as a bride, but as another casualty of the frontier. Through the veil of falling snow, a shape materialized, massive and dark against the white. At first, she thought it was a bear, and a weak laugh escaped her blue lips. Of course, eaten by a bear would be a fitting end to her luck. But the shape moved with human purpose, and as it drew closer, she saw it was a man. No, more than a man, a giant wrapped in furs and leather, with a rifle slung across his broad back. His face was hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat and the shadow of a full beard. But his movements were sure despite the treacherous ground. He stopped when he saw her, standing still as a statue for a long moment. Then he was moving again, closing the distance with long strides. Evelyn tried to speak, to plead for help, but no words came. The mountain man knelt beside her, and she caught a glimpse of eyes the color of winter sky, pale blue and unreadable. Without a word, he shed his heavy coat and wrapped it around her, the warmth of it almost painful against her frozen skin. Then, as easily as if she weighed nothing, he lifted her into his arms. "Please," she managed through chattering teeth. "The coach, Josiah." "Saw it," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to come from deep in his chest. "He's beyond help. You're not yet." The journey that followed was a blur of white and cold and the steady rhythm of his breathing. Evelyn drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of strong arms holding her secure and the gradual return of blessed warmth. When she next opened her eyes fully, she was lying on a bed of furs before a crackling fire. The space was small but well built, a cabin of fitted logs chinked with mud, with tools and supplies hung neatly on the walls. The scent of wood smoke and pine filled her nostrils. The mountain man sat on a stool near the fire, working on something with a knife. Now she could see him clearly, weathered features that spoke of years in the elements, dark hair that hung past his collar, hands scarred from hard use. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 35, but the wilderness had marked him. "You're awake." He didn't look up from his work. "Good. Wasn't sure you'd make it." Where am I?" "My place. About 5 miles from where your coach went over." 5 miles? Evelyn struggled to sit up, gasping at the pain in her ribs. "But I need to— Mr. Travis is expecting me in Cedar Ridge." Now he did look at her, those pale eyes studying her with an intensity that made her pull the blanket higher. "Storm's not breaking for days. Even then, trails blocked by the wreck. You're not going anywhere." The reality of her situation crashed over her. She was alone in a cabin with a stranger, a mountain man who lived apart from civilization. Her reputation, already fragile, would be in ruins. "I can't stay here," she said, though even she heard the futility in her words. "You can't leave either." He returned to his work, carving something from a piece of antler. "Unless you fancy freezing to death. But it's not proper." That earned her a sound that might have been a laugh. "Propriety doesn't count for much out here. Miss Survival does." He rose, moving to a shelf where various supplies were stored. She noticed he walked with a slight favor to his left leg. An old injury, perhaps. He returned with a tin cup filled with something that steamed. "Tea," he said, holding it out. "Pine needle and willow bark. It'll help with the pain." Evelyn accepted it gratefully, wrapping her hands around the warm metal. "Thank you, Mr. Colt." He settled back on his stool. "Colt Harwood. Evelyn Parker." She sipped the bitter tea, feeling its warmth spread through her chest. "I'm grateful for your help, Mr. Harwood. I'll find a way to repay you once I reach town." "No need." His attention was back on his carving. "And it's just Colt. The mister died somewhere on the Bozeman Trail." She wanted to ask what he meant, but something in his tone warned against it. Instead, she took in more of her surroundings. The cabin was sparse but clean, everything in its place. A rifle and pistol hung by the door, along with traps and snowshoes. Pelts were stacked in one corner: beaver, fox, wolf. This was a man who lived by his wits and his gun, as far from civilization as one could get. "You're a trapper?" "Sometimes. Hunter, guide when the need arises." He held up his work, a button carved from antler with intricate detail. Whatever keeps me fed. And you live here alone? His hand stilled for a moment. Yes. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the pop of burning wood. Evelyn found herself stealing glances at him, this strange savior who had appeared from the storm. There was something in his bearing that spoke of violence held in check, of a man who had seen too much and chosen solitude over society. You should rest, he said finally. Your ribs are bruised, maybe cracked, going to hurt for a while. How do you know? Felt them when I carried you. Had enough injuries to recognize the signs. She should have been mortified that he had touched her, examined her, but somehow she wasn't. He had saved her life. Modesty seemed a small price. The letter, she said suddenly, remembering. In my things. Did you... Your belongings are there. He nodded to a corner where her salvaged items lay. What I could find, anyway. Evelyn's heart sank. Her trousseau, her few precious books, all lost to the mountain. All that remained of her old life scattered in the snow. I was to be married, she said quietly. A mail order arrangement. Mr. Travis sent for me. Colt's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Sam Travis from Cedar Ridge? You know him? Know of him. His tone was carefully neutral. Runs cattle. Has a reputation. What kind of reputation? He was quiet for a long moment, then shook his head. Not my place to say. You'll form your own opinion soon enough. But Evelyn heard what he didn't say, saw it in the tightening of his jaw. Whatever Samuel Travis's reputation was, it wasn't entirely good. I didn't have a choice, she found herself saying. My husband died 2 years ago, left me with nothing but debts. I've been working in a factory, but it's no life. When I saw Mr. Travis's advertisement, you don't need to explain yourself to me. Don't I? You must think me foolish, coming west to marry a stranger. I think you're surviving, same as everyone else out here. He set aside his carving and moved to bank the fire for the night. Get some sleep. Morning comes early in the mountains. He pulled a bedroll from a chest and spread it near the door, as far from her as the small space allowed. The gesture wasn't lost on Evelyn, despite his rough appearance. Colt Harwood was showing her more consideration than many civilized men would have. As she settled back into the warm furs, exhaustion pulling at her limbs, she watched him check the door's heavy bar and test the window shutters. Every movement was practiced, automatic, the rituals of a man who had learned to be always watchful. Colt, she said softly, thank you for saving me. He paused at the door, his broad back to her. Would have done the same for anyone. But as he blew out the lantern and the cabin fell into firelit darkness, Evelyn wondered if that was true. There had been something in his eyes when he'd found her in the snow, a flash of recognition, perhaps, or kinship, one lost soul recognizing another. Outside, the storm raged on, sealing them in their temporary shelter, and somewhere in the distant darkness, Samuel Travis waited for a bride who might never arrive. The first week passed in a rhythm dictated by necessity and the mountain's harsh demands. Each morning, Evelyn woke to find Colt already up, stoking the fire and preparing simple meals, usually venison jerky, hardtack, and more of his medicinal tea. Her ribs protested every movement, but she refused to lie idle while he worked. I can help, she insisted on the third day, struggling to sit up despite the sharp pain in her side. Colt looked up from cleaning his rifle, his expression skeptical. You need to heal. I need to be useful. I won't be a burden. Something in her tone must have reached him, for he nodded slowly. Can you cook? Of course. Then you can tend the pot. Stu needs watching while I check the trap lines. It was a small victory, but Evelyn took it gratefully. As the days passed, she found more ways to contribute, mending tears in his clothing with careful stitches, organizing the supplies he kept haphazardly stored, keeping the fire fed while he was gone. The domestic tasks gave her purpose and helped push back the anxiety about her uncertain future. Colt was often absent during daylight hours, returning with rabbits, ptarmigan, or occasionally a deer haunch. He moved through the forest like a ghost. She realized, watching him approach through the window one afternoon, even laden with game. His footsteps barely disturbed the snow. "How long have you lived here?" she asked one evening as they shared a meal of rabbit stew. "4 winters? Alone?" "Yes." His short answers had frustrated her at first, but she was learning to read the silences between his words. This was a man unaccustomed to conversation, who measured speech like a precious commodity. "Don't you get lonely?" He considered this, chewing thoughtfully. "Loneliness is in the mind. The mountains have their own company." "That's not an answer, isn't it?" He met her gaze briefly before returning to his meal. "People bring complications. Mountains are simple. Survive or don't." Evelyn wanted to press further, but thunder rumbled overhead, followed by the crack of splitting wood. She gasped as part of a pine branch crashed onto the roof, shaking the entire cabin. Before she could react, Colt was moving. He grabbed his coat and axe, heading for the door. "Stay inside. You can't go out in this. Roof won't fix itself." And he was gone into the storm. She watched anxiously through the window as he climbed onto the slanted roof, barely visible through the driving snow. The wind howled, threatening to tear him away with each gust. When a larger crack sounded and the cabin shuddered, Evelyn's heart leapt to her throat, unable to stand the helplessness. She donned her shawl and stepped onto the porch. "Colt, come down before you're killed." She could barely see him through the white veil, but his voice carried back. "Almost done." Another crack, louder than before. She saw him slide, catch himself, then slip again. Without thinking, Evelyn rushed into the storm. The cold hit her like a physical blow, stealing her breath, but she pressed forward. "Where's the ladder?" she shouted. "Sidewall." She found it, a rough construction of lashed poles, and held it steady as he descended. The moment his boots touched ground, she grabbed his arm. "You fool! You could have died!" He looked down at her. Snow caught in his beard, something unreadable in his pale eyes. "You came out." "Of course I came out. I couldn't let you." She stopped, suddenly aware of how close they stood. Her hand still gripping his sleeve, the moment stretched between them, charged with something that had nothing to do with the storm. Then Colt gently freed his arm and guided her back inside. "You'll catch your death," he said gruffly, adding wood to the fire. "Should have stayed in. Like you should have waited until morning to fix the roof?" That almost laugh again. Fair point. They stood dripping before the fire, and Evelyn became acutely aware of how her wet clothing clung to her form. She moved to her corner, turning her back to change into her one dry dress. She could hear Colt doing the same, the rustle of fabric and leather strangely intimate in the small space. When she turned back, he was hanging their wet things by the fire. The domestic normalcy of it struck her, as if they were any married couple weathering a storm together. The thought brought heat to her cheeks. "Your shoulder," she noticed. "You're bleeding." He glanced at the tear in his shirt, where blood seeped from a gash. "Branch caught me. It's nothing. It's not nothing. Sit." Her tone brooked no argument, and, surprisingly, he obeyed. She found his medical supplies, crude but serviceable, and set to work cleaning the wound. This close, she could smell wood smoke and pine on his skin, see the fine lines around his eyes that deepened when he winced. "You have a gentle touch," he said quietly. "My mother was a nurse. Before she married, she taught me. Useful skill out here." "Yes." She tied off the bandage, her fingers lingering perhaps a moment too long. "There, try not to tear it open again with your heroics." He caught her hand as she pulled away, his calloused fingers warm against hers. "Thank you." 2 simple words, but the way he said them, soft and sincere, made her pulse quicken. She pulled free, busying herself with putting away the supplies. That night, sleep eluded her. The storm had passed, leaving an eerie quiet broken only by Colt's steady breathing. She studied his sleeping form in the dying firelight, this strange, silent man who had saved her life and asked nothing in return. Who was he really? What had driven him to this solitary existence? The next morning brought clear skies and bitter cold. Colt announced he needed to hunt. Their meat stores were running low and would be gone most of the day. "I'll leave you the pistol," he said, checking his rifle. "You know how to use it. Point and pull the trigger." He almost smiled. "Close enough. Bar the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me." Who else would be out here? His expression darkened. Hopefully no one. But the mountains have their share of men best avoided. After he left, Evelyn found herself restless. She tidied the already neat cabin, mended everything that could be mended, and still the hours dragged. Finally, she turned to the few books on his shelf. A Bible, worn from use, a treatise on tracking, and, surprisingly, a volume of Shakespeare's sonnets. She was deep in the poetry when she heard footsteps on the porch. Too early for Colt to return, and the tread was different, lighter, uncertain. "Hello, the cabin," a man's voice, not Colt's. "Anyone there?" Evelyn's heart raced. She moved to the window, peering out carefully. A stranger stood outside, thin, nervous-looking, wearing town clothes unsuited for the weather. "Please," he called again. "I'm lost. Just need directions back to Cedar Ridge." Cedar Ridge, where Samuel Travis waited. She hesitated, Colt's warning echoing in her mind. But the man looked harmless, shivering in the cold. "I can't open the door," she called back. "But Cedar Ridge is east. Follow the creek down about 10 miles. "Ma'am?" The man moved closer. "Ma'am, is that you? Are you Miss Parker? Mr. Travis sent me looking when the stage didn't arrive." Her blood chilled. "How do you know my name?" "He showed me your photograph. Said you were his intended. The whole town's been searching." The crack of a rifle cut him off. The man yelped and dove aside as bark exploded from a tree inches from his head. Colt emerged from the forest, weapon trained. "That's far enough. Hutchins." "Harwood?" The man, Hutchins, scrambled backward. "I didn't know. Travis just said to find the woman. Now you've found her, and you'll forget you did." "I can't do that. Travis is paying good money." Colt worked the rifle's lever, the sound sharp in the cold air. "What's Travis paying worth against your life?" Hutchins went pale. "You wouldn't. You're already wanted. Then I've got nothing to lose. Do I?" Colt's voice was deadly calm. "Turn around. Walk away. Tell Travis the mountains claimed her like they did the driver. He won't believe it. Make him—" For a moment, Evelyn thought Hutchins might argue further. Then he turned and fled, stumbling through the snow in his haste to escape. Colt watched until he was out of sight before lowering the rifle. When he turned to the cabin, Evelyn was standing in the doorway. "You didn't bar the door. You said no one but you. And if I'd been killed, what then? Then it wouldn't have mattered." She stepped aside to let him enter. "Who are you really? Why does that man know you're wanted?" Colt set his rifle by the door, movements deliberate. "Everyone's wanted for something." "Don't!" Her voice shook with sudden anger. "Don't deflect. I've been living under your roof, trusting you with my life. I deserve the truth." He stood with his back to her, tension in every line of his body. Finally, he spoke. "I was a soldier once, then a hired gun. Did things I'm not proud of for men who were worse than the enemies they paid me to fight. When I finally said no, when I tried to stop something that shouldn't have been done." He turned to face her. "Let's just say certain powerful men have long memories and deep pockets. You're an outlaw? In the eyes of some. A dead man walking in the eyes of others." His smile was bitter. "Still feel safe under my roof?" Evelyn studied him, this man who had saved her, sheltered her, treated her with more kindness than she'd known in years. "Yes." Surprise flickered across his features. "You're either brave or foolish." "Perhaps both." She moved to the fire, needing its warmth. "That man will tell Travis where I am." "Yes, he'll come for me. Probably." And then, Colt was quiet for a long moment. "Then you'll have to choose." "Between what?" Between the life you contracted for and... He stopped, jaw tightening. And what? She pressed. And nothing. Travis is your intended. You have an agreement. An agreement I made when I had no other choice. And what's changed? You still need security. A home. Things I can't offer. The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes, frustration, fear, and something else she didn't want to name. You don't know what I need. Don't I? His voice was rough. You need more than a half-broken mountain hermit living on borrowed time. You deserve better than this. He gestured at the crude cabin. Better than me? No. What if I don't want better? What if I want... She stopped, heat flooding her cheeks. Want what? He had moved closer without her noticing, his presence filling the small space. To choose for myself, for once in my life, to choose. They stood face to face, the air between them charged. Evelyn could see the war in his eyes, desire battling with honor, need against conscience. She raised her hand to his cheek, feeling the roughness of his beard, the warmth of his skin. Evelyn, her name was a warning on his lips. I'm not asking for promises, she whispered. I'm not asking for forever. I'm just asking you to stop deciding what's best for me. For a heartbeat, she thought he would pull away. Then his hand covered hers, pressing it against his face. You don't know what you're asking. Then show me. He searched her eyes, looking for doubt, for fear, finding none. He lowered his head slowly, giving her time to retreat. Instead, she rose on her toes to meet him. The kiss was gentle at first, almost hesitant, as if he was afraid she might break. Then her arms wound around his neck, and restraint shattered. He pulled her against him, the kiss deepening into something hungry and desperate. She could taste loneliness and longing, feel the tremor in his hands as they framed her face, when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard. Evelyn felt as if the world had shifted on its axis. Everything she thought she knew about duty and desire, about what she should want versus what she did want, had changed in that moment. This complicates things, Colt said roughly. Everything was already complicated. He rested his forehead against hers, his hands still cupping her face. Travis won't give up. Men like him never do. Then we'll face whatever comes, together. He pulled back to look at her, wonder and worry warring in his expression. You say that now. I say it because I mean it. She placed her hand over his heart, feeling its rapid beat. I've been traded and sold and bartered my whole life. Let me choose, Colt. Just this once. Let me choose. His arms tightened around her, and she felt him surrender. To her. To this. To the possibility of something neither of them had dared hope for. Outside, night began to fall, bringing with it new snow and the distant howl of wolves. But inside the cabin, wrapped in each other's arms before the fire, Evelyn felt warmer than she had in years. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, Travis, the town, the price on Colt's head. But tonight, she had chosen, and for the first time in her life, she was exactly where she wanted to be. The kiss changed everything and nothing. In the days that followed, Colt withdrew into himself like a wounded animal seeking shelter. He left earlier each morning, returned later each evening, and spoke even less than before. The warmth Evelyn had glimpsed in his eyes was shuttered behind walls of self-imposed distance. She tried to bridge the gap with small gestures, a hand on his shoulder as she served dinner, a soft good night that lingered in the air, but he remained stubbornly remote. The rejection stung more than she cared to admit. If you regret kissing me, just say so. She finally snapped one evening, slamming his plate down hard enough to rattle the table. He looked up, startled by her vehemence. I don't regret it. Then why are you acting like I have the plague? Because I'm trying to protect you. From what? You? Yes. The single word carried the weight of mountains. Evelyn sank into the opposite chair, fighting tears of frustration. I'm not made of glass. Colt, I've survived worse things than a broken heart. Have you? His pale eyes bored into hers. Have you survived watching someone you care about destroyed because of what you are? Because of the blood on your hands that won't wash clean? The raw pain in his voice stopped her cold. Cold? No. He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. You want to know why I live alone? Why I choose these mountains over people? Because everyone I've ever let close has paid the price. He stalked to the window, staring out at the darkening forest. Evelyn waited, sensing this was a wound that needed lancing. Her name was Margaret, he said quietly. A doctor's daughter in Kansas. Sweet, gentle thing who saw something worth saving in a hired gun trying to go straight. I thought I could leave it all behind. The killing, the reputation. Start fresh. His hands clenched on the windowsill. But men like me don't get fresh starts. The Baxter gang found out about her. Used her to draw me out. By the time I got there, he stopped, unable to continue. Evelyn rose and moved to stand behind him, not touching but close enough that he could feel her presence. It wasn't your fault, wasn't it? I knew what I was, what follows men like me, but I let myself believe. He turned to face her, anguish etched in every line. I won't do that again. Won't paint another target on an innocent woman's back. I'm not innocent, Evelyn said softly. And I'm not, Margaret. No, he agreed. You're stronger, which makes it worse, because you make me want things I've got no right to want, such as a life, a real life, not just existing, waking up next to someone who doesn't flinch when I reach for her, children who don't inherit their father's sins. His voice roughened. Foolish dreams for a man with a price on his head. Evelyn's heart ached for him, this man who had built walls so high he couldn't see over them. The only foolish thing is denying yourself happiness because of what might happen. Easy to say when you don't know. Then tell me. She moved closer, close enough to see the flecks of silver in his blue eyes. Stop protecting me from the truth and tell me everything. He searched her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Moving to the trunk in the corner, he lifted the false bottom she hadn't known existed. Inside lay relics of another life, a worn badge, military papers, wanted posters, and a small daguerreotype. Evelyn picked up the photograph, studying the image of a younger colt standing beside a delicate blonde woman. Even in the faded picture, Margaret's sweetness shone through. I was a soldier first. Colt began, settling into his chair. Fought in the war between the states, then stayed on for the Indian campaigns. Good at it, too. Too good. When my enlistment ended, men came offering gold for those same skills. He spread the wanted posters on the table. The Pinkerton Agency, railroad barons, cattle kings, they all needed men willing to do what the law couldn't or wouldn't. I told myself I was keeping the peace. But truth was, I was just a killer with official sanction. Evelyn studied the posters. Murder, assault, robbery. The amounts varied. $500, $1,000, one for $5,000. These are all for you. Different names. But yes, when you make enemies of powerful men, they find ways to make you a criminal. What made you stop? His jaw tightened. Jacob Thornton, railroad magnate who hired me to clear squatters off land he claimed. Except they weren't squatters. They were homesteaders with legal deeds, families who'd worked that land for years. When I found out, I confronted him. He touched one of the posters, the one for $5,000. He laughed, said the law was whatever men like him decided it was, ordered me to burn them out anyway. Colt's eyes went distant. I refused. He sent other men to do it. Women and children died in those fires. Dear God, Evelyn breathed. I hunted down the men who did it, every last one. Then I went for Thornton himself. Almost got him too, but his bodyguards were faster. He indicated his left leg, the one he favored. Took a bullet that nearly crippled me. Would have died if an old trapper hadn't found me. Brought me here to heal. And Margaret? Met her while I was recovering in Kansas, trying to disappear. For a few months, I almost believed I could. His voice turned bitter. The Baxters were friends of Thornton. The rest you know. Evelyn absorbed it all. The violence, the loss, the crushing weight of guilt he carried. Another woman might have been horrified, but she had seen too much of the world's cruelty to judge a man for fighting back against it. "You're not that man anymore," she said quietly. "Aren't I? I would have killed Hutchins if he'd pushed. Would kill Travis or anyone else who threatens." He stopped, but she heard what he didn't say. "Who threatens me?" "Yes." She picked up Margaret's photograph again, studying it. "She loved you." "She did. God knows why. I do." Evelyn set the picture down gently. "Because beneath all that armor, she saw what I see. A good man carrying wounds that won't heal because he won't let them. Evelyn, I'm not asking you to forget her. I'm not asking you to stop grieving. I'm just asking you to consider that maybe, just maybe, you've punished yourself enough." He stared at her as if she'd spoken in tongues. "You still don't understand. Travis will come. Others might follow. This cabin, this life. It's no fairy tale. It's hard and dangerous and real," she interrupted. "More real than anything I've ever known. Do you think my life before was some paradise? Sold to my first husband to pay my father's gambling debts. Worked like a servant in his house until fever took him. Then the factory, 16 hours a day until my fingers bled. Fending off foremen who thought my wages included other services." Now it was Colt's turn to look stricken. "Evelyn, I've been hungry, cold, desperate. I've been property and commodity, but never a person. Until here. Until you." She moved around the table to stand before him. "You think you're protecting me. I've never felt safer than in this cabin with you. You're not safe, not with me. Then let that be my choice to make." They stared at each other across years of pain and loss, two damaged souls recognizing their match. Then Colt reached out slowly, his hand trembling slightly as it cupped her cheek. "You terrify me," he admitted. "More than any man I've faced, any bullet I've dodged. You make me hope, and hope is dangerous for men like me. Then be dangerous with me." He drew her down onto his lap, burying his face in her hair. She felt the shudder that ran through him. The moment his walls finally crumbled, they held each other as the fire burned low. Not speaking, not needing to. Understanding flowed between them deeper than words. Later, as Evelyn prepared their simple meal, she found herself humming, something she hadn't done in years. Colt watched from his chair, and she caught him almost smiling. "What?" "Nothing. Just this. It's good." Such simple words. But they warmed her more than any flowery declaration. This was what she had never dared dream of. Not passion or romance, but partnership, companionship. The quiet pleasure of sharing space with someone who didn't demand or expect, but simply accepted. That night, for the first time, Colt didn't retreat to his bedroll by the door. When Evelyn patted the furs beside her, he hesitated only a moment before joining her. They lay side by side, not touching except where their hands linked between them. "Tell me about the mountains," she said softly. "What you love about them." He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, the honesty. Mountains don't lie or pretend. They're beautiful and terrible and absolutely themselves. In spring, when the snow melts, wildflowers carpet the meadows, Indian paintbrush, lupine, flowers with no names. Elk bring their calves to graze. Eagles nest in the high peaks. His voice took on a quality she'd never heard, almost reverent. "There's a lake 2 days north where the water's so clear you can see trout swimming 20 feet down, and caves with crystals that catch the light like stars, places no other man has seen, or at least none who lived to map them. It sounds magical. It is, but it's also brutal. One mistake, one moment of carelessness, and the mountain claims you. No mercy, no second chances. Like life, yes." He turned his head to look at her. "Could you live with that? Really live with it? No shops, no society, no comfort but what we make ourselves. I've had shops and society. They never brought me comfort." She squeezed his hand. "Show me your mountains. Colt, teach me to survive them." "You already have. You survived me." She laughed softly. You're not as frightening as you think. No. No, you're just a man who's forgotten he's allowed to be happy. He brought their joined hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. Maybe you can help me remember. Maybe I can. They fell asleep like that, hands clasped, hearts cautiously opening. Outside, snow began to fall again, sealing them in their small world, but morning would come, and with it, decisions that couldn't be postponed forever. In the trunk, hidden beneath old pain, Margaret smiled eternally from her photograph, but in the bed, Evelyn breathed soft and warm and alive, and for the first time in years, Colt's sleep was free of ghosts. The past would always be there, scars that ached in cold weather, but perhaps, just perhaps, the future held more than mere survival. Perhaps it held the one thing neither of them had dared name: home. The change in their relationship was like spring arriving in the mountains, gradual, then sudden. Where before they had moved around each other carefully, now there were casual touches, shared glances that lingered, quiet moments of contentment that neither had known they were missing. Colt began teaching Evelyn the skills she would need to survive in his world. Her soft hands grew calloused, learning to set snares and clean game. She learned to read weather and cloud formations, to find direction by stars, to move through snow without exhausting herself. Like this, he instructed one crisp morning, adjusting her grip on the rifle. Steady against your shoulder. Don't fight the weight. Let it settle. She squeezed the trigger, and the shot went wide. Bark exploding from a tree 10 feet from her target. I'm hopeless. You're learning. His hands covered hers, guiding her aim. Breathe. Find your rhythm. The rifle's just an extension of yourself. This time when she fired, the pine cone she'd been aiming for shattered. I did it! She turned in his arms, face glowing with triumph. You did. He smiled, a real smile that transformed his weathered features. Few more weeks of practice. You'll be out shooting me. I doubt that. But she was pleased, both by the accomplishment and by the pride in his eyes. They were returning to the cabin when Colt suddenly stopped, head tilted. Inside, now! She'd learned not to question that tone. They moved quickly, Colt's hand on her back, urgency in every line of his body. Once inside, he barred the door and went to the window. What is it? Horses, 3, maybe 4, coming up the trail. Her blood chilled. Travis? Maybe. He was already checking weapons, his movements efficient and deadly. Or bounty hunters. That poster for 5,000 draws attention. What do we do? He pressed the pistol into her hands. Remember what I taught you. Anyone comes through that door who isn't me, Colt, no, we face this together. Not this time. He cupped her face, kissed her hard and quick. I won't let them take you. No matter what happens, you stay inside. Promise me. I can't. Promise me. Evelyn. The desperation in his voice broke through her protests. I promise. He was gone before she could say more, slipping out the back way she hadn't even known existed. Evelyn went to the window, heart pounding, and watched him disappear into the trees. The riders came into view minutes later, 4 men, hard-faced and well-armed. She recognized one from town, though she couldn't recall his name. They dismounted cautiously, weapons drawn. Harwood, the leader called. Colt Harwood, we know you're here. Come out peaceful-like. And nobody needs to get hurt. Silence answered them. The men exchanged glances, spreading out to surround the cabin. We know about the woman, another shouted. Pretty little thing from the wrecked stage. Hand her over along with yourself, and maybe we can come to an arrangement. Evelyn's hands tightened on the pistol. Through the window, she caught movement in the trees. Colt, circling like a wolf. The hunters didn't see him. Last chance. Harwood, we're coming in. The leader approached the door, and Evelyn raised her weapon, ready to defend their home. But before he could reach it, a shot cracked through the air. His hat flew off, and he dove for cover. That's close enough. Colt's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Turn around. Right away. Last warning. 4 of us. 1 of you. The leader called back. trying to locate Colt's position. "I like those odds." "Your funeral." What followed was unlike anything Evelyn had witnessed. Colt moved through the forest like a phantom, never in the same place twice. His shots were precise, methodical. A gun hand here, a shoulder there. Never killing, but always incapacitating. The bounty hunters fired wildly into the trees, hitting nothing but bark and snow. In minutes, it was over. 3 men lay groaning in the snow, while the 4th, the leader, stood with Colt's rifle trained on him. "You're making a mistake," the man said, cradling his bleeding hand. "That bounty's going up. 10,000 by spring. Every gun in the territory will come looking. Let them come." Colt stepped from the trees, and Evelyn gasped. Blood ran down his left arm, staining the snow beneath him. "But you won't be among them. You can't kill us all. We surrender." "Good." Colt's smile was cold. "Then you can deliver a message. Tell whoever sent you that Colt Harwood is done running. Anyone comes for me or mine, I'll paint these mountains red. Clear." The man nodded frantically. "Clear. Get your men and go. Leave the weapons." They limped away, supporting each other, leaving rifles and pistols scattered in the snow. Colt watched until they were out of sight before his knees buckled. "Colt!" Evelyn burst from the cabin, catching him as he fell. "You're hurt. Just a graze." But his face was pale, and blood soaked through his sleeve at an alarming rate. She helped him inside, her emergency training taking over. The bullet had passed through the meat of his upper arm, painful but not fatal if kept clean. She worked in focused silence, cleaning and binding the wound while he sat stoic. "You promised to stay inside," he said when she finished. "You promised not to get shot. Did I?" It was implied. She secured the bandage with shaking hands. "Don't ever do that again. Can't promise that. Colt, they'll keep coming. Evelyn, that man was right. The bounty will draw more. And eventually," he caught her hands, "you should go. Find Travis, complete your contract. He's not a good man, but he won't get you killed. Stop it. I'm trying to save your life." "And I'm trying to save yours." The words burst from her with unexpected force. "Don't you understand? There is no life for me without you, not anymore." He stared at her, something raw and vulnerable in his eyes. "Evelyn, I love you." The words hung in the air between them. Irrevocable. "I know it's too soon, too fast, too everything, but I love you, Colt Harwood. And if you think I'm leaving you now, you're a bigger fool than those bounty hunters." He pulled her against him with his good arm, burying his face in her hair. She felt him shudder, felt the moment he stopped fighting what was between them. "Say it," she whispered. "Please, just once. I love you." The words seemed torn from him. "God help me, I love you more than life." They held each other as afternoon faded to evening. 2 people finding shelter not just from the storm outside, but from the storms within. When they finally pulled apart, Evelyn saw her own determination reflected in his eyes. "So, what do we do?" she asked. "We survive, together." He touched her face gently. "But it means leaving, going deeper into the mountains where they won't follow, living rougher than even this, as long as it's with you." That night, they made love for the first time, not the desperate passion of those who might lose everything, but the careful tenderness of those who had found everything. In the flickering firelight, scarred hands worshipped soft skin, and gentle fingers traced old wounds. They came together like 2 halves of something broken made whole, and in that joining found not just pleasure but peace. Afterward, they lay entwined, planning their escape. Come spring, they would travel north to the lake Colt had described, build a new home in a place untouched by man or law. It would be hard, harder than anything Evelyn had known, but it would be theirs. "No regrets?" Colt asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "None. You. Only that I didn't find you sooner." She smiled against his chest. "You found me exactly when you were meant to." Outside, wolves howled in the distance, not a threat but a serenade. Wild voices raised in celebration of the night, and in the cabin, two hearts beat as one. No longer alone in the wilderness, but home in each other's arms. The world would come for them. Travis would not give up easily, and neither would the men who wanted Colt's head. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, there was only this, skin against skin, breath matching breath, and love blooming fierce and unexpected in the frozen heart of the mountains. Tomorrow they would pack what they could carry and disappear into the white silence of the peaks. But tonight, they had each other, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 3 weeks passed in deceptive peace. The snow melted gradually, revealing patches of brown earth and the first brave shoots of spring grass. Colt's arm healed well under Evelyn's care, and they continued their preparations to leave, smoking meat for the journey, reinforcing packs. Studying the hand-drawn maps Colt had made over the years, they had let their guard down. That was their mistake. The morning Samuel Travis arrived. Evelyn was washing clothes in the stream, while Colt repaired trap lines upstream. The first sign of trouble was the silence. No birds, no small rustlings in the underbrush. By the time she realized the danger, it was too late. "Miss Parker?" She spun around to find Travis sitting on his horse not 20 feet away, flanked by 2 armed men. He was exactly as she'd imagined from his letters, tall, well-dressed, with cold gray eyes and a thin mouth that seemed incapable of genuine smiles. "Mr. Travis." She kept her voice steady, though her heart raced. The pistol was in the cabin. Useless. "You've led me quite a chase." He dismounted with studied casualness. 3 months I've been waiting. Bad for a man's reputation, being stood up by a mail-order bride. I was in an accident. I know all about the accident, and about your rescue. His lips twisted on the last word. "Playing house with that murderer, Harwood. Did you think I wouldn't find out? I owe you nothing. We never married. You owe me everything." His voice turned hard. "I paid your passage. Bought you, fair and square. You're mine by rights. I'm not property to be bought. Aren't you?" He stepped closer, and she could smell tobacco and pomade. "What else do you call a woman who sells herself through the mail? At least whores are honest about their trade." The slap cracked across his face before Evelyn realized she'd moved. Travis touched his reddening cheek, eyes narrowing dangerously. "You'll regret that. I regret many things. That won't be one of them." He grabbed her arm, fingers digging in brutally. "Where is he? Where's Harwood?" "Gone. Left days ago." "Liar." He shook her hard. "His smoke still rising from that shack. You think I'm stupid?" "Let her go." Colt's voice came from behind them, deadly quiet. Travis spun, dragging Evelyn with him as a shield. His men raised their rifles. Ah, the famous Colt Harwood. Travis's grip tightened, making Evelyn wince. "Though you don't look like much, just another mountain rat who thought he could take what's mine. I said let her go." Colt hadn't drawn his weapon, but tension coiled in every line of his body. "Or what? You'll shoot through her to get to me?" Travis laughed. "I think not. Drop your guns. All of them." Colt's jaw tightened, but he slowly unbuckled his gun belt, letting it fall. The rifle followed. "Good dog. Now, here's what's going to happen. The lady comes with me, as was always intended. You can crawl back to your hole and count yourself lucky. I don't have my men shoot you where you stand." "No." Evelyn struggled against his grip. "I won't go with you. You don't have a choice." Travis nodded to his men. "Tie your hands. She'll learn proper behavior soon enough." One of the men dismounted, producing a length of rope. As he approached, Evelyn saw Colt tense, calculating distances and odds. She caught his eye, trying to warn him. 2 rifles trained on him. He'd be dead before he moved 3 steps. "Don't," she said quietly. "Please." The rope bit into her wrists as the man bound them. Travis hauled her toward his horse, and she stumbled, crying out as her ankle twisted. That small sound of pain broke Colt's control. He lunged forward, incredibly fast for such a large man. But not fast enough. The rifle butt caught him across the temple, dropping him to his knees. Blood ran down his face as he struggled to rise. "No!" Evelyn fought against Travis's hold. "Leave him alone! Tough bastard!" Travis drew his pistol, aiming at Colt's head. "But even mountain men die when you put a bullet in their brain. You kill him. I'll never stop fighting you." Evelyn's voice shook with fury. "Every day, every hour, I'll make your life a living hell." Travis considered this. "Perhaps you're right. Death's too quick." He holstered the gun and nodded to his men. "Work him over. Make sure he remembers the price of touching what belongs to me." What followed burned itself into Evelyn's memory. The two men were methodical, professional, taking turns with fists and boots while Travis held her in place, forcing her to watch. Colt fought back at first, landing several solid blows, but eventually the numbers told. He went down and stayed down, curled protectively as the beating continued. "Stop!" Evelyn sobbed, past caring about pride. "Please, you're killing him." "That's the idea," Travis said conversationally. "Though I suppose we should leave something for the wolves." He signaled his men to stop. Colt lay motionless in the bloodied snow, breathing in harsh, wet gasps. One of the men spat on him. "Mount up," Travis ordered. "We've wasted enough time here." He dragged Evelyn to his horse, lifting her into the saddle before mounting behind her. She twisted, trying to see Colt, but Travis's body blocked her view. "He's still alive, if you're wondering," Travis said in her ear. "Though he won't be for long. Gut-shot men die slow out here. Hours of agony, calling for water, for mercy, for death. Fitting end for a killer, don't you think? You're a monster. I'm a businessman, and you're an investment I intend to collect on." He spurred his horse forward. "Best forget about him. Your life is with me now." As they rode away, Evelyn caught one last glimpse of Colt. He had managed to raise his head, and their eyes met across the distance. In that moment, she saw everything. Love, anguish, and a promise that this wasn't over. Then the trees closed between them, and he was gone. The journey to Cedar Ridge took 2 days of hard riding. Travis kept Evelyn's hands bound and her horse tethered to his, treating her more like a captured animal than a woman. His men rode behind, laughing and making crude jokes about breaking in the wild filly. "You're very quiet," Travis observed as they camped the first night. "Mourning your dead lover? He's not dead. If the beating didn't kill him, the gut shot did. If that didn't, the cold finished the job. Accept it. Colt Harwood is buzzard food." But Evelyn knew better. She had seen Colt move as they beat him, protecting his vital organs. The blood had been from cuts and bruises, not a mortal wound. Travis's cruelty had made him sloppy, too eager to torture rather than ensure a clean kill. Colt was alive. She had to believe that. Cedar Ridge appeared on the horizon at sunset on the second day, a sprawling town that had grown fat on cattle money and railroad speculation. Travis's ranch lay just beyond, a massive operation with a main house that looked more like a plantation manor than a frontier home. "Welcome to your new life," Travis said as they rode through the gates. "I trust you'll find it more comfortable than that hovel in the mountains." The house was indeed luxurious, polished floors, crystal chandeliers, furniture shipped from back east, but the windows had bars, Evelyn noticed, and the servants who greeted them had the downtrodden look of prisoners. "Your room," Travis said, showing her to a well-appointed chamber on the second floor. "You'll find appropriate clothing in the wardrobe. Burn what you're wearing. It stinks of him." "No," he backhanded her casually, splitting her lip. "First lesson. You don't say no to me. Ever." She touched her bleeding mouth. "Tasting copper. There will be a reckoning for this." "From who? Your dead mountain man?" He laughed. "You're mine now. Evelyn, legal and proper. Soon as we speak the words. The preacher will be here tomorrow." "I won't say them." "Oh, you will." His smile was cold. "See, I know about your debts back east. Already paid them. In fact, you marry me willing. Or I sell those debts to certain interested parties. Men who collect in flesh when coin's not available. Your choice. He left her then, locking the door from outside. Evelyn sank onto the bed, despair threatening to overwhelm her. But no, she wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Colt had taught her to survive, and survive she would. She examined her prison carefully. The windows were barred, but the bars were decorative, not functional. With the right tools, they could be bent. The lock was sturdy, but not impossible. And Travis's arrogance was his weakness. He saw her as a possession, not a person capable of planning. Night fell, and with it came sounds from below. Men drinking, Travis holding court. She heard her name mentioned, followed by laughter and crude speculation. Let them laugh. They wouldn't be laughing long. A soft tap at the window made her freeze, heart pounding. She approached cautiously. A face appeared in the darkness. Maria, one of the Mexican servants who had helped her bathe earlier. "Señora," the woman whispered through the glass. "You are the woman of Señor Colt." Evelyn nodded, not trusting her voice. "He lives. My cousin saw him in town. Asking questions. He comes for you." Joy and terror warred in Evelyn's chest. "When?" "Soon. Be ready." Maria pressed something through the bars, a small knife, for the lock, if needed. Then she was gone, leaving Evelyn clutching proof that hope lived. Colt was coming. She just had to survive until he did. The next morning, Travis presented her with a wedding dress, white silk and lace, beautiful and revolting. "Wear it willingly, or my men will dress you themselves." She put it on, hiding Maria's knife in the bodice. Let him think her broken. Let him believe he'd won. The preacher arrived at noon, a thin, nervous man who refused to meet Evelyn's eyes. They gathered in the parlor, Travis's men serving as witnesses. The ceremony began, words flowing like poison. "Do you, Samuel, take this woman?" A shot shattered the window, dropping one of Travis's men. Then Colt was there, terrible and beautiful in his fury, moving through the room like death itself. He had come as promised, and hell followed with him. The parlor erupted in chaos. Colt moved like a force of nature, his face still bearing the cuts and bruises from the beating, but his movements deadly precise. The second guard barely had time to reach for his weapon before Colt's fist connected with his jaw, sending him crashing into the crystal cabinet. "Evelyn, down!" Colt shouted. She dropped behind the settee as Travis drew his pistol, firing wildly. The preacher fled, Bible forgotten, his coattails flapping as he disappeared through the door. "You're supposed to be dead!" Travis snarled, taking cover behind an overturned table. "Disappointed?" Colt's voice was cold as winter wind. "Take more than your hired thugs to put me down." More of Travis's men rushed in from other rooms. Gunfire exploded, splinters flying from furniture and walls. Evelyn pressed herself flat, the knife clutched in her hand, wedding dress pooling around her like spilled cream. Through the chaos, she saw Colt moving with calculated efficiency, using the room's layout to his advantage. But he was outnumbered, and more men were coming. She had to help. Crawling on her belly, she made her way toward the nearest fallen guard. His pistol lay just out of reach. As her fingers stretched for it, a boot came down hard on her wrist. "Going somewhere, bride?" Travis hauled her up by her hair, pressing his gun to her temple. "Harwood, show yourself, or I paint the walls with her brains." The shooting stopped. Colt emerged from behind a pillar, blood seeping through his shirt from a fresh wound. His eyes found Evelyn's, and she saw him calculate odds, distances, chances. "Let her go. Travis, this is between us. Nothing's between us. You're nothing, a hired killer, a mountain rat who thought he could steal from his betters." Travis's grip tightened, making Evelyn gasp. "Drop the gun." "Don't," Evelyn said. "He'll kill us both anyway." "Shut up." Travis struck her with the pistol, opening a gash on her cheek. That was his mistake. The moment his weapon moved away from her head, Evelyn drove the hidden knife back into his thigh. Travis screamed, his grip loosening. She twisted away as Colt's shot took him in the shoulder, spinning him around. "Run!" Colt grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the door. They burst outside to find the ranch in chaos. Maria and the other servants had opened the corrals, stampeding horses and cattle through the grounds. Ranch hands ran in all directions, trying to restore order. A saddled horse stood nearby, Maria's final gift. Colt lifted Evelyn onto it, then swung up behind her. Shots rang out as they galloped through the gates, but the confusion worked in their favor. They rode hard through the night, changing direction multiple times to throw off pursuit. When the horse began to stumble, Colt guided them into a ravine where a small spring bubbled up through the rocks. "We can rest here," he said, helping her down. "Few hours, no more." In the moonlight, she could see the toll the rescue had taken. Fresh blood stained his clothes, and he moved stiffly, favoring his ribs. "You're hurt." She reached for him, but he caught her hands. "I'm fine, but you—" He touched the cut on her cheek gently. "I'm sorry, I should have been faster. You came, that's all that matters." She pressed against him, feeling him solid and real. "I knew you would." Travis was wrong about one thing. He said into her hair, "They did shoot me, but not in the gut, through the side. Missed everything important. How did you survive? How did you find me?" "Crawled to the cabin, patched myself up. Then I went hunting." His voice hardened. "Found some of his men in town. Convinced them to talk. Maria helped with the rest. She saved us both. Remind me to leave gold where she'll find it." He pulled back to study her face. Did he hurt you?" She knew what he was asking. "No, not that way. He wanted to wait until we were married. Some twisted idea of propriety." Relief flickered across his features, followed by renewed fury. "Should have killed him. You might have—" That shoulder wound looked bad. "Not bad enough." Colt glanced back the way they'd come. "He'll live, and he'll follow. Men like Travis don't give up what they think they own. Then we disappear, like we planned. It's not that simple anymore. You're known now. The runaway bride who chose an outlaw over respectability? Every bounty hunter in the territory will be looking—" Evelyn cupped his battered face in her hands. "Then we'll face them. Together." He kissed her then, fierce and desperate, tasting of blood and gunpowder and freedom. When they broke apart, his eyes held a determination that matched her own. "There's a place," he said. "Old mining town, mostly abandoned. Friend of mine lives there, owes me favors. We could hole up, figure out our next move." "How far?" 2 days hard riding. Can you make it?" "I can make it." They rode through the remainder of the night and into the dawn, pushing the horse as hard as they dared. When the animal finally gave out, they continued on foot, Colt leading them through terrain that would discourage casual pursuit. By the second night, Evelyn was stumbling with exhaustion, her wedding dress, now filthy and torn, catching on every branch and rock. Colt finally called a halt in a shallow cave, building a small fire that couldn't be seen from below. "Here." He handed her some jerky from his pack. "Need to keep your strength up." She chewed mechanically, too tired to taste. "Tell me about this friend of yours." "Moses Freeman. Former slave, former soldier, current hermit. Saved his life once in Kansas. He's different, but trustworthy." "Different how?" "You'll see." Colt's smile was cryptic. "If he agrees to help, we might have a chance. Moses knows ways through these mountains, even I don't." They slept huddled together for warmth, taking turns on watch. Near dawn, Evelyn woke to find Colt sitting at the cave mouth, silhouetted against the lightning sky. "Can't sleep." "Thinking." He didn't turn around. "About what comes next. This life I've dragged you into. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose this. Chose you. You chose without knowing the full cost." She moved to sit beside him, linking their fingers. "Then tell me the cost. Always running. Always looking over our shoulders. No home except what we can carry. No children. Because what kind of life would that be for them? Just existing day to day, until someone faster or luckier finally catches up." "You're wrong." He looked at her, surprised by her certainty. "We won't always run." She continued, "Someday, Somewhere. We'll find a place so remote, so hidden, that the world will forget we exist. We'll build something real there, and if we're blessed with children, they'll grow up free, truly free, not bound by society's chains. That's a pretty dream. It's not a dream, it's a promise. She squeezed his hand. I've been bought and sold and traded my whole life, but with you, I chose. That freedom is worth any price. Dawn broke fully, painting the mountains in shades of gold and rose. Colt studied her face in the new light, seeing the steel beneath the beauty, the survivor beneath the lady. All right, he said finally. We'll try it your way. Build something instead of just running. Together? Together. They reached the abandoned mining town by midday, a collection of weathered buildings clinging to a mountainside like old bones. Most were empty, but smoke rose from one chimney, and a figure emerged as they approached. Moses Freeman was a giant of a man, taller even than Colt, with skin like polished ebony and eyes that held depths of hard-won wisdom. He carried a shotgun casually, but Evelyn sensed the casualness was deceptive. Well, Moses's voice was deep as thunder. Colt Harwood, back from the dead, and with company. Moses. Colt nodded. We need help. I can see that. Moses studied them both, taking in their injuries, their exhaustion, Evelyn's ruined wedding dress. Travis's bride, aren't you? Whole territories buzzing about the woman who knifed him at her own wedding. Will you help us? Evelyn asked directly. Moses considered her for a long moment, then smiled, a transformation that made him look years younger. Any woman with grit enough to stab Sam Travis is welcome in my house. Come on, then. You both look like you could use food and rest. His home was surprisingly comfortable. Books everywhere. Furniture he'd clearly made himself. Artwork that spoke of travels to distant places. Over a meal of beans and cornbread, they told him everything. So, you need to disappear, Moses summarized, completely and permanently. Can it be done? Colt asked. Maybe. There's places in these mountains where no white man's ever set foot. Indian sacred grounds. Mostly. But they might accept you if approached right. But first, you need to deal with Travis. Kill him, you mean? Colt said flatly. No. Moses shook his head. Killing him makes you fugitives forever. But there are other ways. Travis has enemies, men he's cheated, families he's destroyed. What if they learned certain information? What if documents surfaced proving his land claims were fraudulent? You have such documents? Moses's smile was sharp. I might know where to find them. Man like me. People forget I can read. Amazing what papers get left lying around. Hope stirred in Evelyn's chest. You could destroy him legally. Destroy is a strong word, but I could certainly make him too busy saving his own skin to worry about runaway brides. They spent the night planning. Moses would return to Cedar Ridge, set certain events in motion. Meanwhile, Colt and Evelyn would travel deeper into the mountains, to a place Moses described, a hidden valley where hot springs kept the ground clear even in winter. 3 weeks. Moses said, Give me 3 weeks, and Travis will have bigger problems than you two. And if he doesn't? Colt asked. Then we go with your plan. Moses's eyes were hard. I've got no problem putting rabid dogs down. That night, in the small room Moses had given them, Evelyn and Colt made love with desperate tenderness, aware that tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for now, they were safe, together and free. No regrets? Colt asked again, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. Only one, she admitted. What's that? I wish I'd stabbed Travis somewhere more permanent. His laughter, rare and genuine, filled the darkness. And in that moment, despite everything, the danger, the uncertainty, the long odds against them, Evelyn knew they would survive. More than survive. They would thrive. Because they had something Travis, with all his money and power, could never understand. They had chosen each other. And that choice, that freedom, was worth fighting for. The hidden valley Moses had described lay 2 days deeper into the mountains, accessed through a narrow canyon that looked impassable, until Colt showed her the ancient trail carved into the rock face. They led their new horses, gifts from Moses, carefully along ledges barely wide enough for single file, mist from a waterfall soaking them to the skin. When they finally emerged on the other side, Evelyn gasped. The valley spread before them like a secret Eden, steam rising from hot springs that kept patches of grass green despite the lingering snow. A small lake reflected the sky, and caves pocked the cliff faces, promising shelter. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "And defensible," Colt added, ever practical. "One way in, clear sight lines, fresh water. We can hold here if needed." They made camp in one of the larger caves, its mouth facing east to catch the morning sun. The interior was dry and spacious, with a natural chimney that would draw smoke out. Previous occupants, Indians most likely, had left fire rings and even some clay vessels. As Colt secured their supplies and weapons, Evelyn explored their new home. The hot springs ranged from scalding to merely warm, and she couldn't resist shedding her travel-worn clothes to sink into one of the cooler pools. The mineral-rich water soothed aches she hadn't realized she carried. "Enjoying yourself?" Colt's voice carried amusement. She turned to find him watching from the rocks, his expression softer than she'd ever seen it. "Join me." He hesitated, even now. After everything, there remained a shyness between them in daylight. Then he set aside his gun belt and did as she asked, hissing as the hot water hit his still-healing wounds. They soaked in comfortable silence, the steam creating a private world around them. Evelyn studied his scars, so many of them, each telling a story of violence survived. She traced one across his ribs, feeling him tense, then relax under her touch. "Will we ever truly be safe?" she asked quietly. "Safe is relative out here." He caught her hand, kissing her palm. "But safer than we were." "Moses is clever. If anyone can neutralize Travis without bloodshed, it's him. And if he can't," Colt's eyes hardened, "then I finish what Travis started." That night, they made their first meal in their new home. Rabbit Colt had snared, wild onions Evelyn had found, and the last of Moses's cornbread. It felt almost normal, domestic even, if she ignored the rifle within arm's reach and the way Colt positioned himself to watch the entrance. Days passed in quiet routine. Colt hunted and improved their defenses while Evelyn gathered edible plants and organized their living space. She discovered the Indians had left more than fire rings. Painted symbols covered one cave wall, and hidden caches held tools and preserved foods. "They'll want these back," she said, showing Colt a beautifully worked hide blanket. "Maybe, or maybe they left them for the next people seeking sanctuary." He examined the paintings. "These are old, very old." The symbols seemed to tell a story, figures fleeing, finding shelter, building new lives. Evelyn traced them with one finger, feeling kinship across the years with others who had run to these mountains for freedom. Their peace shattered on the 10th day. Evelyn was washing clothes at the spring when she heard it. Horses in the canyon. Many horses, moving fast. She ran for the cave, finding Colt already positioned at the entrance with his rifle. "How many?" she asked, checking the pistol he'd taught her to use. "6, maybe 7. His voice was grim. Not Moses, he'd signal first. The riders emerged from the canyon in single file, and Evelyn's heart sank. Travis led them, his arm in a sling but his face set with vicious determination. Behind him rode hard men, not town thugs, but professional killers. "Quite a little nest you've made," Travis called out, staying beyond rifle range. "Almost didn't find you, except one of my Paiute scouts knew about this place." Sacred ground, apparently. They weren't happy about sharing the information. "What did you do to them?" Evelyn demanded. "What I had to—" Travis's smile was cold. "Just like I'll do what I have to here. Last chance, Evelyn. Come with me willingly, and I'll let Harwood live. Make me take you, and you'll watch him die slowly." "Go to hell," she replied. "Ladies first." Travis signaled his men, who spread out in a semicircle. "Harwood, you've got 1 minute to send her out, or we're coming in." Colt glanced at Evelyn. "There's another way out. Through the caves, comes out near the waterfall. Take it." "I'm not leaving you." "You are. Someone needs to survive to tell Moses what happened." He pressed extra ammunition into her hands. "Go! Now! Colt! I said go!" He pushed her toward the back of the cave. "I'll hold them as long as I can." Tears blurred her vision, but she knew he was right. Staying meant they both died. She kissed him hard, tasting desperation and love and goodbye. 30 seconds, Travis shouted. Evelyn ran behind her. She heard Colt's rifle speak, followed by return fire that echoed like thunder in the enclosed space. The cave system was a maze, but Colt had made her memorize the route. Left at the Painted Bear, right at the Crystal Formation, straight through the narrow squeeze that opened into... A hand grabbed her hair, yanking her back. One of Travis's men had circled around, anticipating their escape route. Evelyn fought wildly, clawing and kicking, but he was too strong. "Got her, boss," the man called. He dragged her back toward the main cave, where the gunfight had intensified. Through the chaos of smoke and noise, she saw Colt had barricaded himself behind fallen rocks, making every shot count. 2 of Travis's men lay still, but more were advancing. Then she saw Travis himself, creeping along the wall, flanking Colt's position. In seconds, he'd have a clear shot. "Behind you!" Evelyn screamed. Colt spun, firing, but Travis was already moving. The bullet caught Colt high in the chest, spinning him around. He went down hard, rifle clattering away. "No!" Evelyn tore free from her captor, rushing to Colt's side. Blood spread across his shirt, and his breathing came in painful gasps. "Well, that's that." Travis stood over them, reloading. "You know, I was going to let him die quick, but after all the trouble you've caused..." He aimed at Colt's knee. "Let's make it memorable." The shot never came. Instead, Travis jerked, looking down in surprise at the arrow protruding from his shoulder. More arrows followed, and suddenly the cave filled with Paiute warriors. Travis's men scattered, firing wildly, but the warriors moved like ghosts. In minutes, it was over. The surviving gunmen fled back through the canyon, Travis among them, clutching his wounded shoulder. An elderly Paiute man approached, his face painted for war but his eyes kind. He spoke in accented English. "This is sacred ground. Those who come in peace may shelter here. Those who bring violence..." He gestured at the dead gunmen. "Please," Evelyn begged, cradling Colt's head. "Help him." The elder knelt, examining the wound. He spoke rapidly in his own language, and 2 younger men brought supplies. They worked with practiced efficiency, packing the wound with herbs and moss. "He may live," the elder said finally. "Or not. The spirits will decide. You stay. We will watch the passes. No one else will come." "Thank you," Evelyn whispered. "Why are you helping us?" "The woman Maria sent word. Said you were good people, running from bad men. Also," he smiled slightly, "Travis killed 2 of our young men to find this place. Now he knows we have not forgotten how to fight." The Paiutes left as silently as they'd come, but Evelyn sensed their presence in the hills, standing guard. She turned her attention to Colt, who drifted in and out of consciousness, burning with fever. For 3 days, she barely left his side. She bathed his face with cool water from the springs, forced herbal tea between his lips, and talked constantly about their future, about the home they would build, about everything and nothing, just to keep him anchored to life. On the 3rd night, his fever broke. He opened clear eyes to find her slumped beside him, still holding his hand. "Evelyn?" His voice was hoarse but aware. She jerked awake, tears streaming. "You're back. Oh God, you're back. Travis, gone. The Paiute saved us. He's wounded, maybe dying." "Good." He tried to sit up, winced, and let her push him back down. "Moses?" "No word yet, but Colt..." She squeezed his hand. "The elder said Travis killed 2 of their people. He made an enemy of the whole tribe." Colt actually smiled. Man never did know when to stop pushing. They heard from Moses a week later, carried by a Paiute messenger. The note was brief but momentous. Travis arrested for land fraud and murder. Ranch seized. Federal marshals involved. You're clear. We'll send word when it's safe to come down. Evelyn read it aloud twice before it sank in. It's over? Really over? Maybe. Colt was sitting up now. Still weak, but improving daily. Men like Travis have friends. There's still the bounties on me. Moses is working on that too. He found documents, witnesses. Says given time, he can clear your name, at least of the worst charges. And then we decide, stay here. If the Paiutes allow it, go north to that lake you described, or... She hesitated. We could go somewhere new, California, maybe start fresh where no one knows us. Colt pulled her close with his good arm. What do you want? Evelyn looked around their cave home. Rough but theirs. Sanctuary hard won. Through the entrance, she could see the valley spreading green and gold in the spring sun. It wasn't the life she'd imagined as a girl, but it was real and free, and hers to choose. I want to stay, she said, at least for now. This place, it feels like home. Then we stay. He kissed her temple. Though I should warn you, summer here brings mosquitoes the size of hummingbirds. I'll manage. She curled against him carefully, mindful of his wounds. I've managed worse. They sat together watching the sun set over their hidden valley. Two souls who had found each other in the wilderness and chosen to make a life on their own terms. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, building proper shelter, establishing peace with the Paiutes, learning to live without looking over their shoulders. But tonight, they were together, alive and free, in the grand scheme of things. It was more than enough. It was everything. As stars emerged overhead, Evelyn thought she understood the painted figures on the cave wall better now. They weren't just fleeing. They were choosing. Choosing difficulty over servitude. Uncertainty over chains. Love over mere survival. She'd made her choice. There in Travis's parlor with a knife in her hand and freedom in her heart. Everything since had been just the price of that choosing. And despite it all, the fear, the pain, the blood, she'd make the same choice again. Spring melted into summer, bringing wildflowers that carpeted the valley in waves of color. Colt's strength returned gradually, and with it came the work of building a real home. They chose a spot near the hot springs, but elevated enough to avoid flooding, with clear sight lines and the cliff at their back. The Paiutes, true to their word, helped. Young men taught Colt their building techniques while women showed Evelyn which plants healed, which nourished, and which killed. The elder, who finally introduced himself as Joseph Winnemucca, became a frequent visitor. Your man. He learns quick. Joseph told Evelyn one afternoon as they watched Colt working with the younger warriors. Has the spirit of these mountains in him? He does, she agreed, pride warming her chest. The sun had bronzed Colt's skin, and the constant work had restored his strength. More importantly, the haunted look had faded from his eyes. News from Moses came sporadically. Travis had survived his wounds only to face federal prosecution. His ranch was broken up. The stolen land returned to rightful owners. Some of Colt's bounties had been withdrawn as witnesses recanted testimonies clearly given under duress. Another year, Moses wrote, and you might be completely free to go wherever you please. But as their cabin took shape, one room growing to 2, then 3, Evelyn found herself less eager to leave. This valley had become more than sanctuary. It had become home. The morning sickness started in late summer. At first, she attributed it to something she'd eaten, but when it persisted, accompanied by other signs her mother had once described, the truth became undeniable. She sat by the lake for hours, hand pressed to her still flat stomach, joy and terror warring in her heart. Colt found her there as sunset painted the water gold. You've been quiet lately. I have something to tell you. She took his hand, placed it over her belly. We're going to have a baby. The emotions that crossed his face, shock, wonder, fear, joy, made her love him even more. He dropped to his knees, gathering her close with shaking hands. A baby, he breathed. Our baby. Are you happy? Happy? He pulled back to look at her, tears tracking through the dust on his face. Evelyn, I never thought I'd have this, any of this, a home, a woman who loves me. And now—" He pressed his forehead to hers. "Yes, God, yes, I'm happy," they told Joseph the next day. The old man smiled knowingly. "The springs bring fertility. Many babies have begun here." He studied them shrewdly. "You will marry properly now?" Evelyn and Colt exchanged glances. In all the chaos, they'd never formalized their union. The preacher ran before finishing the ceremony with Travis. Evelyn said, "We're not legally anything. Legal is white man's concern." Joseph replied, "But marriage is for the spirit. We have ceremonies, if you wish, binding in the eyes of the Creator, if not your government." They accepted gratefully. The ceremony took place at sunrise by the largest hot spring, with the whole band as witnesses. Evelyn wore a doeskin dress gifted by Joseph's daughter, while Colt stood tall in his best shirt, freshly shaved for the occasion. The vows were simple. Promises to share strength in weakness, warmth in cold, hope in despair. Joseph bound their wrists with a cord woven from sweetgrass, and an elder woman sang blessings over them in words older than memory. "Now you are one," Joseph declared, "in this life and the next," as Colt kissed her, his hands gentle on her waist. Evelyn felt something settle in her soul. This was real in a way her almost marriage to Travis never could have been. This was chosen, earned, blessed. Fall brought Moses himself, riding in with supplies and news. He embraced them both, admiring their cabin and congratulating them on the coming child. "Travis is finished," he reported over dinner. 20 years in federal prison for murder and fraud. His associates are scattering like rats. As for you, Colt—" He produced a paper with an official seal. "Governor's pardon for all charges in Wyoming territory. Seems Travis kept detailed records of his bribes and threats. Made a lot of powerful men look bad." Colt stared at the document. "I'm free. In Wyoming, yes. Other territories might take some work, but it's a start." Moses grinned. "You could actually go to town without getting shot at. Not sure I remember how to do that," Colt said dryly. They celebrated quietly, aware of how fragile such victories could be, but it was progress, more than either had dared hope for. Winter came early and hard, but they were ready. The cabin was snug. Firewood stacked high, root cellar full of preserved foods. Evelyn's belly rounded with the growing child, and Colt became almost comically protective, trying to do everything himself until she firmly reminded him she wasn't made of glass. The baby came with the spring thaw, as if waiting for the world to warm before entering it. The Paiute midwife guided Evelyn through the labor while Colt paced outside like a caged wolf, flinching at every cry. When it was over, when their daughter's first wails echoed across the valley, he was allowed inside. Evelyn, exhausted but triumphant, placed the tiny bundle in his arms. "A girl," she said softly. "What should we name her?" Colt stared down at the perfect little face, tears streaming unashamedly. "Margaret," he said finally. "For the past, but her middle name, Hope, Margaret Hope Harwood, for the future." "It's perfect." Little Maggie, as she came to be called, grew like the wildflowers, hardy and bright and absolutely fearless. She took her first steps in the meadow, spoke her first words in English and Paiute both, and wrapped her father around her tiny finger from the moment she first grasped it. 2 years later, a son followed, James Joseph, named for Colt's father and their Paiute friend. He had his mother's green eyes and his father's steady nature, content to watch while his sister explored everything within reach. Their life wasn't easy. There were hard winters, scarce game, injuries and illnesses far from any doctor. But there was also incredible beauty. Summers when the valley bloomed like Eden, autumns painted in gold and crimson, the constant miracle of the hot springs steaming against snow. And there was love. Love that had been tested by fire and bloodshed, that had chosen difficult over easy, freedom over security. Love that built something lasting in a place others called nowhere. One evening, 5 years after that desperate flight from Travis's ranch, Evelyn found Colt sitting on the cabin porch, watching their children play in the meadow. Joseph's grandson was teaching them to track rabbits, all three chattering excitedly. "Any regrets?" she asked, settling beside him. "About what? This life. It's not what either of us planned." He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "I plan to die alone in these mountains. This," he gestured at their children, "their home, the peaceful valley. This is so far beyond my plans, I don't have words for it." "That's not an answer." "No regrets," he said firmly. "Not one. You?" Evelyn considered. Somewhere out there was a world of bustling cities, proper society, easier lives. But here was Colt's steadfast love, their children's laughter, freedom to be exactly who they were. "I was meant for another cowboy," she said slowly. "A cold transaction dressed up as marriage. Instead, I found a mountain man who showed me what choosing really means. And I choose you again, every time, in every life." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink behind the peaks. Their daughter shrieked with delight as she finally caught the rabbit's trail, while their son solemnly examined tracks in the dirt. This wasn't the fairy tale ending of stories. It was better, real and earned and theirs. Two people who had found each other in the wilderness and chosen to build something lasting. A love born of blizzards and bullets, tested by separation and sorrow, and stronger for all of it. As stars emerged overhead, Colt stood and offered Evelyn his hand. "Come on, Mrs. Harwood, let's get our wild things inside for supper." She took his hand, calloused meeting calloused, and let him pull her up. Together they called their children home, voices echoing across their hidden valley. And if those echoes sounded like happiness, like peace hard won, like love that had conquered all, well, that's because they were. In the end, Evelyn had been right that night in the cabin, desperate and defiant. She hadn't been meant for Samuel Travis or any other man who saw her as property. She had been meant for this, for choice, for freedom, for a love that asked everything and gave even more in return. She had been meant for Colt Harwood and the life they built together in the shadow of the mountains. And that, as their daughter would say when she grew old enough to demand the story again and again, was the very best kind of meant to be. Thank you for listening to this wild tale from the American frontier. Where are you enjoying this story from? Leave a comment below and let's connect across the miles. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel From Wild West and share your thoughts about Evelyn and Colt's journey. Did their love story touch your heart as much as it touched mine?